fucking great. Do I look weird with this thing on? Do I look like I'm about to sell a tech product right now, or sell you some like shitty new tech service? Anyway, you know why you're here because Geddy Lee's in the house tonight. I'm excited to be here too. Just before we start, how many bass players? Any bass players here? Any Canadians? Any Canadian bass players? Alright, cool. So Geddy's the only one. Alright, listen, I grew up in Littleton. I'm from Denver. I grew up here. I grew up a Rush fan. I got a few friends here that I grew up going to McNichols Arena, Red Rocks, seeing these guys. The band was so important to me growing up, I can't even tell you. I was one of those maybe slightly annoying people. Like maybe a bunch of you were that like put Rush on all the fucking time. So anyway, I also just one more thing for every Geddy out, which is, this thing's ruined my life, right? It's ruined your life too, right? Okay, good, right? I finished a book today for the first time in like fucking 5 years, because this thing's ruined my life, and I'll read books to you. And I read Geddy's new book, and it is amazing. So we'll talk about it tonight, but if you haven't read it, go buy it. It's for Rush fans, you know, especially, it's just amazing. And you guys all got it? Yeah! Go read it, right? All right, so you guys are book readers. There's fucking snobs looking down at me. That's so good at it. So, all right, without further ado, Geddy Lee.
This guy, thank you for being here. Thank you for being here.
Two Jewish bass players tonight. That's what's happening tonight. Two Jewish bass players talking shop.
As usual.
As usual.
You want to sit?
Let's do it.
Let's sit.
Let's sit. This is the sitting portion. Let's all sit. Have a civilized conversation. Okay, so read your book, Geddy. This is the hard-hitting part of the interview. Okay. So, in this book, there's a lot of death.
That's true.
There's death, there's the Holocaust, which we'll get to, there's brain tumors, there's cancer. On the other hand, there's cocaine, Gene Simmons, there's Alex being drunk about every 3 pages. So we'll get to all of that. Where would you like to start? Or I guess I'll start, because I'm supposed to start.
You're the host, man.
Okay, so do this. I love the book. I mean, it was, as a Rush fan, it was amazing. It was so comprehensive. It filled in a lot of gaps of the knowledge that I knew about the band, but growing up in the 80s and 90s before the internet, we just got bits and bobs here. We didn't know anything, you know. We just get what we were, very little information. So it's like a lot of cool stuff about your whole career. So I'm gonna start with like the interviewer's simplest question, which is, why did you write this book?
Why did I write this book? Well, I never really wanted or was interested in writing a memoir. And after I did my first book, A Big Beautiful Book of Bass, my publisher, my publisher was nudging me once in a while, hey, maybe you want to write a memoir. But it wasn't until after my friend and bandmate Neil passed away in January of 2020. Neil. And I noticed also that I was watching my mother start to descend into dementia, which is a terrible thing for anyone to witness. I'm sure you all have experienced it in your families. And then this pandemic thing happened and we were locked down. So there I was with these very reflective difficult things to work through.
Right, yeah.
And so my friend and co-writer Daniel Richler, who's the son of an author, a great Canadian author, Mordecai Richler. Yeah, he was really a great author. Duddy Kravitz and on and on. Anyway, he was in London, I was in Toronto, we were locked down. I guess you could say I was depressed. And he started sending me what he called evocations. And they were little, you know, one-page stories about memories of his dad. And then he would challenge me and say, why don't you write something, a memory of your dad? And so I thought, okay, this is an interesting game. I'll do that, I'll play. So I started writing him back, and we went back and forth. This was probably in the early fall of 2020. And he noticed that my stories were getting longer and longer. And he suggested that perhaps I was writing a book.
Was he playing you? Was he trying to get this?
I think he was playing.
Okay, right.
Yeah. He was looking for a gig, I think.
Yeah.
So he said, I think you're writing a book, and I think you should write a book. I said, okay, maybe this will be good for me. Maybe it will be cathartic. And indeed, it was cathartic. And I threw myself into it, and I sat on my sofa for the next year and a half, writing nonstop until I had 1,200 effing pages of the book, which is more pages than anyone.
That's more pages than I read in like 5 years.
Anyway, I knew they would cut a lot of it out, which they did, and so that's how I came to it.
It has a feeling of like, I don't know, I just read it, so I'm speaking like I read it. If you're along with this, if not, you're going to read it. So you say at the end of the book that it feels like a big weight was lifted off by having put all this down.
Yeah, well, I was dealing with a lot of issues. First of all, I mean, writing about the 70s with Alex and Neil, I mean, that's not work. That's
quite fun.
That's just fun. You know, all those stories, those road stories I tell about being an opening act and traveling in the station wagon with these two guys and smoking so much pot that you don't realize you've gone 3 hours in the wrong direction. It's like, hey, Howard was a road manager. Is St. Louis on the way to Cleveland? You start in Chicago. It's not on the so, you know, there are a lot of stories like that were fun to remember. Because you look at that early part of your life through rose-colored glasses, you don't remember how uncomfortable it was sleeping on luggage in the back of the station wagon. And so on and on. But when I started getting through the more difficult moments, the memories of loss, the memories of pain, of course that requires a different part of your brain, and it forces you to look back and turn stones over to see what you've missed. And of course, talking about where my parents came from, what they survived in the Holocaust was really important to me because I was lucky to be there. I mean, they survived by the skin of their teeth. So, and then losing my dad when I was 12, all those things sort of needed attention.
Was it therapy, sort of?
It was, you know, because we all retain what's called unattended sorrow, things that maybe you didn't deal with when at the time of the loss. And then years later, here I was sitting in my room locked down, dealing with Neil's passing, and so all those things connect. You know, every loss you experience is connected to every other loss. It's just a fact. And so looking through all of that was really cathartic for me. It was really helpful.
There's a lot sort of like, you know, I'm someone who's lucky enough to know Neil, and I know that a lot of people in this room feel like know Neil through his work. And, you know, none of us knew, this book is the first time I got to sort of live that with you know what I mean? So I think a lot of people will find that really moving. So one thing before we get back to other things, but we should talk about, the book has Jewishness, and being Jewish is a big theme in the book. I guess I knew that about you, but I was, and I knew about your parents, but those chapters about your parents were, I mean, they're heavy, they're amazing, and I mean, I don't want to, like, again, I'm asking some sort of like cheesy questions, but you felt like you needed to put that in the book because if it wasn't there, then no one would ever tell that story, I assume.
Well, yeah, there are a few reasons I included it in the book, and number one was that, you know, I asked myself, what's the point of a memoir? What is someone that picks up a book about someone else, what do they hope to get from it? Well, I think they hope to learn something about that person, something real about that person. So if for someone to understand me and my value system and the way my brain works, they sort of have to be introduced to the household I was raised in.
Right.
And I was raised in a household of Holocaust survivors, and my mother in particular talked about it all the time. My dad didn't talk about it ever.
Right. Yeah, he said
my mother more than made up for it.
But to be clear, Holocaust survivors, yeah. She's talking about Holocaust survivors, to be clear, they were both in Auschwitz. They were like,
yeah.
I mean, we talk about, for me, Holocaust survivors, I think, well, they survived the war. They survived like really heavy, like it's incredible that they made it to Canada, and it's incredible you're here.
Well, that's the other thing. You see, I grew up with all these stories, and as my mother got older, some of these stories started to mutate, and we didn't know what exactly was the original story. And so I kind of felt, you know, and she passed away in 2021, and I was very close with her, and I felt like I owed it to her to set the record straight and to do all the research and pay homage to her, because she was an amazing woman. And of course, she was my biggest fan.